Hello everyone, today we are continuing our delightfully nerdy gemstone encyclopedia. We have covered pretty much everything what I wanted to share with you about the pearls. Please watch these 12 amazing episodes if you're really ready to dive very deep into the world of the pearls. And now we have finally reached one of the most anticipated gemstones of all as well, which is opal. At least this is one of my most anticipated topics because opal is an absolutely fascinating gem. Visually, it looks like nothing else in the world and it's instantly recognizable. Think about it. If you put a blue spinel, a tanzanite, a sapphire and an indigoite tourmaline side by side, someone who is not into gemstone might struggle to tell them apart. They are all beautiful shades of blue and to the untrained eye they can look surprisingly similar. But in opal, that's a completely different story. Even someone who has never taken an interest in gemstones will probably point to it and say, "That is an opal. It's one of the most distinctive gems on earth." It has its own unmistakable character and its own style. And if you ask me, it has something I love in gemstone, an incredibly rich inner world. There is another reason opal fascinates me. In some cases, it even has a biological origin. We will be talking about that in today's episode. For example, there are opalized crabs, shrimps, shells, nautiluses, beautifully preserved cicadas, and even the fossilized teeth of prehistoric sharks that have been replaced by precious opal. It's an amazing intersection of gemology and paleontology. I have been putting together quite a collection of photos and I will be showing you the plenty of spectacular examples throughout this series. So today's episode is more of an introduction. We will be answering the big questions. What exactly is an opal? Why does it display that extraordinary play of color? Where in the world it is found? We will also look at the major opal producing regions on the map. Then, in the episodes ahead, we will dive much deeper. We will cover the different varietals of opal, imitations and simulants, treatments and enhancements, very much like we did in our series about the pearls. And there are plenty of fascinating topics ahead and, of course, lots of photos and examples. We will try to keep the highly technical material to a reasonable minimum because not everyone wants to dive into the science. But if you are the kind of a person who loves the technical side of gemology, keep an eye out as we are planning the much more advanced premium course where we will really get into the fine details. So, what is an opal? In gemological terms, opal is a mineraloid, a naturally occurring solid material formed from a solution of silica or silicon dioxide and water. Notice that I said mineraloid, not mineral. The reason is that opal doesn't possess a true crystalline atomic structure. Instead, it's essentially the amorphous to poorly crystalline hydrated silicate gel. Now, this may sound intimidating, but the idea is actually quite simple. You have probably heard the word amorphous before in relation to glass. Now, to be clear, opal is absolutely not glass. The two are completely different materials, but glass is a familiar example of a substance that lacks the orderly crystal structure found in minerals like quartz or diamond. Opal is similar in that respect. Rather than growing as a well-ordered crystal, it forms as an amorphous, hydrated silica material with little or no long-range crystal structure at all. Now let's take a closer look at the structure of opal. An opal is made up of tiny, highly ordered spherical particles of silica. In gemology, these microscopic spheres are known as silica spheres. Between these spheres are tiny gaps or voids, which are filled with what's often referred as the cementing material. That can consist of amorphous silica, water, air, or other fluids, depending on the particular opal. Now let's look at the illustration on the screen again. Those little spheres are the silica particles and the spaces between them are the voids we are talking about. Now that brings us to one of the most commonly misunderstood facts about opal. You will often read in books and online that opal contains up to 20% water. Let's pause here for a moment because the statement is technically correct, but it's also easy to misinterpret. Because it doesn't mean that every opal contains anywhere near 28% water, not even close. The actual water content can vary enormously. One opal might contain only 0.1 or 0.2% of water, essentially a trace amount. Others may contain much higher percentages, and in exceptional cases, the water content can approach up to 28 indeed. So when you see up to 28% of water, think of it as the upper limit of a very broad range, not the average. This, though, naturally leads to another question that people often ask. Can opal dry out? Will they crack? Should you soak them in water? It is true that some low-quality opals can behave differently depending on how wet their environment is, and if you're really curious about that, please revisit our life experiment which we made with some opals. Now, I'm not saying that all the stories are myth. There are certainly different types of opals, and some are known to behave differently under changing environmental conditions. However, I do have to specify that we are right now discussing the jewelry quality opals, not the cheap sort of stones, which definitely can showcase not the best type of their behavior. And if you scroll through the videos which we posted on our channels, you will see the experiments which we made with some of the opals which were very low quality, and they do indeed change depending if they're soaked on water or not. Now let's get back to our science. So to summarize, opal is essentially built from countless microscopic silica spheres, and the spaces between those spheres may be filled with silica, water, air, or other materials like water as well. Now, here where the things get really interesting. If those silica spheres are random in size, shape, and arrangement, the result is what's known as common opal, an opal that displays no play of color. Take a look at the image on screen. In this example, the silica spheres are all different sizes and scattered in a completely random way. Small ones, large ones, everything mixed together without any regular pattern. They aren't neatly stacked in orderly rows like in the first diagram, they're simply packed together haphazardly. The result is a plain white opal with no optical effect. From a gemological perspective, it's common opal rather than precious opal, and visually it's far less spectacular. Now let's look at the third illustration. This green opal is another example of common opal. It's opaque or translucent, cloudy, and lacks any play of color. It has own beauty, of course, but if you didn't know what it was, you might mistake it for the frosted green glass or some sort of ornamental stone. However, everything changes when those silica spheres are nearly identical in size and arranged in highly regular three-dimensional pattern. That incredible precise microscopic structure behaves like a natural diffraction grating. In school, we used to run the experiment when you would tilt the surface of a CD or DVD disc under a light and you see brilliant rainbow colors. Those colors are produced by diffraction combined with interference of light. Something very similar happened inside of a precious opal. The perfectly ordered area of silica spheres causes incoming light to diffract and interfere as it passes through the stone's microscopic structure. The result is that incredible display of shifting spectral colors that makes opal unlike any other gemstone. In gemology, this optical phenomenon is called play of color. Historically, it has sometimes been referred to as opalescence, although today those terms are carefully distinguished because opalescence describes a different optical effect. So, when the opal displays true play of color, it is classified as precious opal. While we're on the subject, it's worth mentioning that opalescent-looking optical effects can also occur in other gemstones. Not long ago, I showed a remarkable violet spinel from Mahenge, Tanzania, that displayed a very pronounced milky glow. Similar optical effects can also be seen in zircon, certain garnets, and a number of other gems from time to time. And if you've been following the channel, you've probably noticed that I occasionally feature stones with this fascinating phenomenon. Although the physical colors aren't always the same as in opal, they all arise from the way light interacts with the microscopic structural features inside the gem. Now, let's talk about the term precious opal. That is my personal opinion, but I think it's becoming a somewhat outdated expression. I always say that every country and historically every gemological tradition has had its own standards for deciding which gemstones are considered precious, semi-precious, valuable, or commercially important. Here is an interesting example. Under all the Soviet gemological standards, an alexandrite was only considered a true precious alexandrite if its color changed from green to a distinctly purplish red. If instead it shifted from green to vivid blue, bright orange or cherry red, even if the color change was dramatic, it wasn't regarded as a proper alexandrite from a gemological or commercial standpoint. Today, that way of thinking is clearly outdated. Those standards were never internationally accepted, and in my view, they have largely lost their relevance. Modern gemology evaluates gemstones using far broader scientific and commercial criteria than many of those older classification systems. That brings me to another point. For many years, first in the Soviet Union and later in Russia, it was widely accepted that the more vivid red an opal displayed, the more precious and valuable it was. In my opinion, that way of thinking has become significantly outdated. I closely follow the international gemstone market. I watch major auctions held by houses like Christie's or Sotheby's, and I have seen exceptional Australian opals sell for extraordinary prices without even a trace of red. Some of the most valuable stones are dominated by electric blues, vivid greens, and breathtaking combination where blue, green, and orange flow seamlessly into one another. Take a look at the image number 4. This is the classic example of what gemologists call precious opal. There is no red at all, yet stones like that command remarkable prices. So while red flashes were once considered an ultimate indicator of value, today market tells a much more nuanced story. That leads to another reason I love opal. Unlike diamonds, where price is heavily influenced by the standardized grading system, every opal is evaluated almost like a work of art. If it's breathtakingly beautiful, it's expensive. If it's less visually impressive, it's worth less. That's really the essence of opal evaluation. We are not just buying a gemstone, we are buying a unique natural artwork created by the earth itself. And there are no universal rules saying an opal must contain a certain percentage of red, blue, or green to reach a particular price. Every stone is judged individually for its beauty, rarity, pattern, brightness, and overall visual appeal. That's one of the things that makes collecting opals so fascinating. Now, back to the science for a moment. When white light enters the ordered microscopic structure of precious opal, it is separated into the different colors of the visible spectrum. The result is a spectacular display of shifting colors that we call play of color. We have already explained the basic principle, but there is one more interesting detail. The color of the flashes depends primarily on the size of the silica spheres. Smaller spheres tend to produce blue and violet flashes. As the spheres become larger, the reflected wavelengths become longer, producing green, yellow, orange, and finally red. So quite literally, the microscopic size of the silica spheres determines the color you see dancing across the surface of the gem. Now let's talk about cutting a little bit. To show off their play of color as effectively as possible, opals are usually fashioned as cabochons, smooth rounded gems with a polished dome, or they're left in freedom shapes that follow the natural outline of the rough. Australian opals are a perfect example. The precious opal often occurs as an extremely thin seam within the host rock. We will look at the geology in much greater detail later in the series. When miners recover a piece, it may have an irregular curve, uneven thickness, or an unusual outline. Rather than forcing it into a perfectly symmetrical shape, cutters usually polish the stone while preserving as much of the precious opal layer as possible. That is why you will see high-end Australian opals, they are asymmetrical, curved, or completely free-form, and that's perfectly normal. Unlike many other gemstones, the opal doesn't need perfect symmetry, a precise geometric proportion to be valuable. Some of the world's finest Australian opals have wonderfully irregular shapes and still sell for hundreds of thousands of dollars. People often ask why opals aren't usually cut with brilliant style facets like diamonds. They certainly can be faceted, but traditionally that's not considered the best way to showcase the opal. The classic cut is a cabochon, a smooth and a domed surface because it allows the play of color to be seen across a broad, uninterrupted area. It's exactly the same reason why star sapphires and star rubies are also cut as cabochons. The curved surface displays the optical phenomena far more effectively than faceting. I actually own one faceted opal. Take a look at this video. It's currently in the house and it's available for sale if you're interested. I will pin the price below the video for anyone who is fascinated by this. It was cut roughly 25 or 30 years ago by the same Canadian collector I mentioned earlier. Back then his hands were still steady enough for precision lapidary work, and he experimented with faceting opals, a relatively uncommon style. However, as you can see for yourself now, probably it's not the best decision for the opal. So, just in a few minutes we have covered the basics of what opal is, why it displays its remarkable optical effects, and why different stones show different colors. Now let's look at where opal come from. Before the discovery of Australia's great opal field in the 19th century, the world's only significant source was Slovakia. Yes, it surprised me the same way as it surprised you when I first learned about that. Today, those historic deposits are essentially exhausted, while Australia has become the undisputed global leader in opal production. In fact, opal is even Australia's official national gemstone, like jade in China, let's say. Many people assume Australian opals must be incredibly rare because you don't see them very often. I used to imagine there were only a handful of small deposits where miners occasionally uncover it, a beautiful stone after moving mountains of rock. The reality is quite different though. Australia's opal fields cover the area of roughly 5,000 square kilometers. That's huge. Of course, truly exceptional gem quality opals are still uncommon, but the deposits themselves are extensive. The real reason fine Australian opals are so difficult to buy is something else entirely. Demand far exceeds supply. There are simply far more collectors, investors, jewelers and enthusiasts looking to buy outstanding Australian opals than there are top quality stones available. That's one of the reasons prices have risen so consistently over the years. However, even though 10 years ago Australia accounted for roughly 95% of the world's precious opal production, today the picture is changing. Ethiopia has become a major player, and several other countries are also contributing to the market. Let's look at the map. Yes, as you can see, Australia still has the largest and most established opal fields in the world. Production is substantial, but demand for fine Australian opals is even greater. Then we have Ethiopia, whose opal industry has grown remarkably over the past few decades. And an interesting point is that not every Australian opal is a famous black opal. Black opals have become Australia's flagship product and are among the most valuable opals in the world, and among the most valuable gemstones in the world, as a matter of fact. But Australia also produces large quantities of white and light opals. Visually, many of these can look remarkably similar to Ethiopian white opals. The difference is often the price. Ethiopian opals generally sell for much less, not necessarily because they are inferior, but because mining costs, labor costs, and the overall cost of production are significantly lower in Ethiopia. Unfortunately, Ethiopia has also experienced an ongoing political instability, which has made mining and investments much more difficult. Personally, I think Ethiopian opals have an enormous future though. If mining operations continue to develop under stable conditions, Ethiopia has every opportunity to become one of the world's leading sources of exceptional opals. And in terms of quality, I believe it could rival and in some categories even compete directly with Australia. And yes, I am saying that even if I'm risking to be stoned for saying out loud such a statement, being here in Australia. Now let's continue around the map. Brazil also has opal deposits, but to be honest though, I haven't yet come across many truly outstanding Brazilian opals. In Bangkok, I know several dealers who import gemstones directly from Brazil, and I have bought beautiful quartz and many other gems from them over the years, but when it comes to opal, the material I have seen has generally been fairly commercial. That doesn't necessarily mean Brazil doesn't produce fine opals. It may simply be that just like in Australia, the best material changes hands long before it reaches the broader market. So I can't draw any firm conclusions based on my own experience. The same goes for the United States. Yes, there are opal deposits there, but most of the material I have personally handled has been commercial quality rather than top-tier gem material. Then there is Mexico. Mexican opals are an entirely different story. Take a look at the image. They don't resemble the classic Australian or Ethiopian opals that most people picture when they hear the word opal, and I have handled quite a few Mexican opals over the years. Some display deep crimson body color, almost like dark arterial blood, although the most familiar examples are vivid shades of fiery orange. Their appearance is so unusual that when you show one to someone who is not familiar with gemstones and ask them to guess what it is, they almost never say opal. People suggest sapphire, maybe garnet or some other gemstone, but opal is rarely their first guess. They also feel surprisingly different in the hand. Mexican fire opal in particular have a warmth that's almost reminiscent of amber. They seem lighter than you would expect for a gemstone, and there is something almost organic about the way they feel. Now, some of you may say that opals are actually very common. You can find them in any part of the world almost. And you're absolutely right. Opal occurs in almost every part of the world indeed. You can find some form of opal in an astonishing number of countries. The important distinction is that most of those occurrences are not gem quality. In this series, we are mainly talking about gem quality opals and gem quality gems in general, the materials that are suitable for fine jewelry and is mined commercially on a consistent basis. Common opals, the opaque, cloudy, pale varietals without play of color, are widespread. They're found almost everywhere. I've been shown opals from Tanzania, Madagascar, Sri Lanka, Thailand, and many other places. And to someone who is not familiar with gemstones, many of these would simply look like flint or an ordinary rock, very much like the examples we looked at earlier in the episode. That said though, something interesting has happened over the last 3 or 4 years. We've been receiving messages from people who own opal deposits in Indonesia, island of Java. They have shown me some genuinely attractive opals. The only limitation at the moment is size. Most of the stones are very small, typically only 2 or 3 carats, sometimes even less. Many are only 5 or 6 millimeters across. They are simply too tiny to fully appreciate their pattern and play of color. The owners have been inviting me rather enthusiastically to visit, and we are definitely planning to go. The mines are still in the early stages of development, so it's impossible to know whether they will eventually produce larger stones or whether they will remain a source of smaller gems. Time will tell. Beyond the major producers, opals are also mined, usually on a much smaller or less consistent scale, in countries including the United States, the Czech Republic, Canada, Slovakia, Hungary, Turkey, Indonesia, Brazil, Peru, Honduras, Guatemala, Nicaragua, and many others. So opals is actually a widespread mineraloid. And here is a last fascinating fact. In 2008, NASA announced evidence suggesting that opal-bearing deposit may exist on Mars. Elon Musk, that's one for you. Spectral data collected by orbiting spacecraft revealed hydrated silica deposits that are interpreted as opaline materials, providing further evidence that liquid water once existed on the Martian surface. So yes, opal may not be unique to Earth after all. However, this stone does look like it's coming from the outer space actually. However, at the moment, our focus when it comes to sourcing truly exceptional material will remain on Australia and Ethiopia. So that will be the wrap up of the introductory episode. In the next chapter, we will dive into one of the most fascinating topics of all: how do opals actually form? So take care of yourself and your loved ones, keep smiling, stay curious, and we will see you in the next episode.